Good day, everyone. You are all welcome to class as we take the study session 5, and the topic is sentence transformation into sheets and worksheet 1. Sentence transformation into sheets and worksheet 1. The introduction. Here we are going to consider the active and the passive voice in this unit. As we know that the active and the passive voice are grammatical elements that play a great role in the use of English. If you use them well, in spoken and written English, you are heard properly and well understood. And if you use these forms wrongly, you become ridiculous, not heard, or misunderstood. That is why you should study this unit very carefully and pay special attention to the use of these forms in English. In English, we can express sentences in two different ways, which are active voice and passive voice. That is it. And the active voice is used when the focus is on the subject or agent or doer of an action that is said to be active of the main verb. So this is the person or thing doing the verb. And in the active voice, the subject of the element or the subject of the sentence does the action, unlike the passive voice, when the person or the thing affected by the main verb becomes the focus. So in the passive voice, the subject of the sentence receives the action. So learning outcomes for study session 5. By the end of this lecture, students should be able to identify the active voice and passive voice and know when to use active and passive voices when communicating, either written or speaking. Either you are writing it or you are speaking it. So they should be able to also identify the different forms of the passive voice and the manner in which the sentences change. Before I go into the definition of active voice and passive voice, in English, we can express sentences in two different ways, which are active and passive. So the voice of a verb describes the relationship between the action that the verb expresses and the participants identified by its argument, that is subject and object. That is what we refer to as voice. When we talk about voice, it has to do with the relationship between the action that the verb expresses and the participants, in the expression or in the sentence. So let's take the first one, which is active voice. The active voice is used when the focus is on the subject. The focus is on the subject or the agent of the main verb. This is the person or thing doing the action or the verb, performing the action. That is the subject. The subject is doing something. The subject is performing something. So in the active voice, the subject of the verb does the action. Take for instance, look at the examples we have below. John painted the house last week. The subject there is John. The verb there is painted. The object there is the house, and the adverb, which is an adverbial, is last week. So let's consider other examples. Look at number 2 now. Millions of people use the internet every day. What is the subject there? The subject is millions of people and the verb is use. The object is the internet. Every day is the adverb. And so on and so forth. We have another example, which is a strong storm destroyed many houses in the village. Only 6 students passed the test. So these are examples of sentences in the active voice. Now let's see the passive voice. The passive voice is used when the person or the thing affected by the main verb becomes the focus. So in the passive voice, the subject of the sentence receives the action. That is it. It is the subject that is receiving the action. That is in passive voice. Look at this. Look at the example we have. We have under the active voice. Now we have the same under the passive. But in this case now, the subject has become the object. Now the house was painted by John last week. Under passive and under active, John was the subject. But here, under passive, John is the one receiving the action. It's not not the object. So the house is the subject under passive, but under active, the house was the object. So now we have the house, which is the subject, was painted, which is the verb, by John, which is the object, last week, which is what? Adverbial. So another more examples of sentences in the passive voice. We have the internet is used by millions of people every day. So millions of people now, as we had in active, we now have it under we have it under other object, and under active it was under subject. So the internet now that was under object in active, we now have it under subject in what? In passive. So and so on and so forth. Now we now have many houses in the village were destroyed by a great storm, and the test was passed by only 6 students. Forms of the passive voice. To change an active voice sentence to a passive voice sentence. Number 1, make the object of the active sentence into the subject of the passive sentence. So there will be a kind of swap. We are going to swap. The object in the active, when it gets to a passive, it becomes the subject. The subject in the active, by the time it gets to the passive, it becomes the object. We also make use of the verb to be in the same tense. So if you have present tense under active voice, so if you want to change it to passive voice, you want to make use of be verb. The be verb must also be present tense. So that is just that. And if the verb in the what's it called? The verb in the active, if the verb is in the active is past tense. By the time you'll be using you'll be using the be verb in the passive, it must be in the past tense. So the passive voice is made with subject to be plus past participle plus by plus object. You can see these elements that we have under passive. Number 1 is the subject. Number 2, it must have to be verb. Be verb. We're talking about be verb. That we're talking about is. We're talking about am. We're talking about was, were, ha, being, been, be, and where. So we have 8 of them. We have 8 be verbs in English. The first one is. The first one is are. The first one is am, was, were, being, been, and be. These are the 8 be verbs we have in English. So you have be verb and past participle plus a by, which is a preposition, and it must have an object. So note that the active voice object becomes the passive voice subject. In the passive, the main verb is always the past participle. Now here are some active and passive voice examples to help. Look at this one now. We have the form, which is under active, subject plus main verb plus object. Look at the passive now. Form, subject plus be verb plus past participle plus by plus objects. The first example there, bees make honey. Bees, that is the subject, make is the verb, honey is the object. That is it. But now we want to change it to passive voice. Honey, that is the subject. Is, we are using is here because in the active, the verb there which is make is in the present tense, and that's why we're making use of is, which is present tense. So honey, you cannot say honey was, since we under active we have bees make is present tense. So we cannot say honey were, no, or honey her. It is singular, and that's why the verb also must be singular and must be present. So honey is made by bees. Now if you look at this passive voice, we have two verbs there. We have be verb is, and we have past participle plus preposition plus the object. That is the. Now another one is James Cameron directed Titanic. James Cameron is the subject, directed is the verb, Titanic is the object. Now look at this one now. Titanic was directed. Now we are taking the object in active, we are bringing it to what? To the subject in passive. And if we have only one verb in active, which is directed, but under passive voice we now have two verbs. So directed is past tense, so we cannot use present tense in passive now. Under be verb now, what we must use must be what? Past tense. So it cannot be, it should not be Titanic was directed. You cannot say Titanic was by James Cameron. No. Was. So directed now is the past participle. By, which is a preposition, James Cameron, which is what? The object. People drink champagne on New Year's Eve. Champagne is drunk by people on New Year's Eve. People drink champagne on New Year's Eve. So champagne is drunk by people on New Year's Eve. Alex is preparing Bill's bicycle. Bill's bicycle is being repaired by Alex. Now look, I want you to understand something here. If you look at the active voice, we have two verbs there. Is repairing. But if you look at the passive, we have three. Please take note of that. When you have one verb in active, you have two verbs in passive. When you have two verbs in passive, sorry, in active, you have three verbs in passive. So is being repaired. These are the verbs there. Chef use these machines to mix the ingredients. These machines are used by chefs to mix what? The ingredients. So that's just that. And the last one is they renovated the restaurant in 2004. The restaurant was renovated by them in 2004. Forms of passive voice. We have present tense, is or are plus past participle of the main verb. Processes. First, the apples are picked, then they are cleaned, and finally they are packed and shipped to the market. The metal sheeting was heated and bent into shape before being cooled, polished, and finally painted. Now look at the rules. The use of scrap paper is not permitted. All students are hereby informed that they only recognize designated places of worship on the campus are the Chapel of Faith, St. Herbert's Catholic Church, and the mosque. So the general thoughts, opinions, and beliefs. New York is considered the most diverse city in the US. It is believed that Amalia Hertz plane crashed in Pacific Ocean. Hungarian is seen as one of the world's most difficult languages to learn. Skin cancers are thought to be caused by excessive exposure to the sun. Events in history. George Washington was elected president in 1788. Another one is crimes or accident. 2 people were killed in a drive by shooting on Friday night. 10 children were injured when part of the school roof collapsed. Let's see this statement in active and positive. We are also going to see another statement in passive and in negative. Bees make honey. Look at the passive. Look at the passive now, which is in negative form. Bees. So honey is not made by bees. Look at the active, which is positive. Bees make honey. Honey is not made by bees. Look at the use of that word not. It shows it is negative. James Cameron directed Titanic. Titanic wasn't directed by James Cameron. Alex is repairing Bill's bicycle. Bill's bicycle is not being repaired by Alex. So these are the positive active statement, and we have a negative passive statement. Let's see passive voice question. We also have a question there. We have a statement on inactive. Bees make honey. Look at the question aspect of it, which is passive. Is honey made by bees? James Cameron directed Titanic. Look at the question there. Was Titanic directed by James Cameron? Alex is repairing Bill's bicycle. Is Bill's bicycle being repaired by Alex? So these are questions that we can derive from these active statements. Now let's see the summary of study session 5. Students have successfully learned the following aspects in this unit: the use of the active voice to make a direct, well-focused statement in English. They have also learned the use of the passive to show focus on the object and for impersonal style, and they can use all of these grammatical items correctly while speaking or writing English. And if they use them well, they will make use of you use English in an elegant manner. So in this unit, the active voice form patterns of a sentence are useful if you want to present any point directly. So the active voice is the most direct way of presenting any idea. So there are some sentences that are not in the active voice, though they have a subject, a verb, and an object. If the object is what we call a complement object, that is, an object that says something further about the verb, such objects are not in the active voice because they cannot be reversed or reverted to form the passive voice. For example, the boy is in the garden. That's a good example of object that is complement. It's complementing. Now, you must learn to use the active voice correctly. So thank you very much. God bless you. Do enjoy the rest of your day. So if there are questions, we are going to discuss that via the discussion forum. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye bye.